If you have Ketu in the second house, there is a high chance that at some point in your life you have looked around at the world and quietly wondered why people are so attached to things that feel temporary. Money, status, family image, social validation, the need to constantly prove worth through possessions, words, or achievements. You may participate in those things, you may even become successful in them, but somewhere inside there is often a strange emotional distance from them, and the distance is not accidental. Because Ketu in the second house creates a soul that is learning something very deep about value, not market value, inner value. The second house in astrology is one of the most underestimated houses. People usually reduce it to wealth and speech, but it is much more than that. It represents your sense of stability, your family conditioning, your relationship with food, money, security, self worth, memory, and the emotional meaning of what you possess. It's the house that asks, what makes you feel safe in this world? And when Ketu enters this house, the answer becomes complicated. Because Ketu separates, it spiritualizes, it creates detachment from the area it touches. So, with this placement, you may spend a large part of your life feeling uncertain about what truly gives you security. Sometimes this shows up materially, period of instability around finances, unusual family circumstances, feeling disconnected from your family lineage, or emotionally different from the people around you. And sometimes the instability is internal rather than external. You may have everything necessary to feel secure, yet still feel unsettled inside. That is one of the hidden signatures of Ketu. It creates a feeling that something essential is missing, even when life appears stable from the outside. And because the second house also governs speech, many people with this placement develop a very unusual relationship with communication. Some become extremely quiet, not shy necessarily, just careful with words. Others swing in the opposite direction and speak in ways that feel detached, sharp, unexpectedly blunt, or strangely insightful. People may remember your words long after conversations end because Ketu gives a certain weight to speech. Not always emotional warmth, but depth. Sometimes you speak less because you instinctively sense how powerful words can be, and sometimes silence feels more truthful than conversation itself. There is also something else that often happens with Ketu in the second house. You begin to realize slowly and painfully that external security cannot fully heal internal security. You may try to build stability through money, through relationships, through becoming respected or capable, but eventually there comes a moment where you recognize that fear does not disappear just because your bank account grows or your image improves. Because the real hunger underneath displacement is not material, it is emotional and spiritual. And until that deeper hunger is understood, nothing feels completely satisfying for very long. This is many people with Ketu in the second house go through periods where they detach from material ambitions altogether. Not permanently always, but cyclically. One phase of life, you may become deeply focused on building wealth or security, then suddenly something inside disconnects. You ask yourself, what am I actually chasing? And the strange thing is, you're not lazy. Displacement is often misunderstood that way. You can work extremely hard when necessary, but your soul does not naturally worship material accumulation the way some other placements do. Even success can feel emotionally empty if there is no deeper meaning attached to it. Now let's talk about family. The second house is deeply connected to early family conditioning and the emotional atmosphere you grew up around. With Ketu here, there is often a feeling of emotional separation in the family environment. Sometimes the family itself is unusual. Sometimes communication within the family feels emotionally incomplete. And sometimes you simply feel different from your own lineage. Part of you never fully belonged there psychologically, even when love exists. And because of this, many people with this placement become internally self reliant very early in life. You learn to process things alone. You become observant, careful, quietly independent. But the challenge is that emotional detachment can slowly become emotional isolation if you are not conscious of it. You may begin withholding feelings without realizing it. You may convince yourself that you do not need emotional reassurance. You may become so accustomed to inner distance that vulnerability starts feeling uncomfortable. And yet, underneath that controlled surface, there is often deep sensitivity, much deeper than people realize. Ketu placements are rarely emotionally shallow, they are emotionally complex. Now, here is where the deeper karmic axis appears. If Ketu is in the second house, Rahu is automatically in the eighth house. This creates a fascinating life pattern. Part of you wants simplicity, peace, stability, and emotional control, but another part is constantly being pulled toward intensity, transformation, psychological depth, and emotional extremes. So life keeps pulling you out of comfortable stability and into experiences that force inner transformation. And many times you resist it at first. You may try to create predictable structures around yourself, but Rahu in the eighth house does not allow life to remain superficial for long. It pushes you toward emotional evolution, toward confronting fears, attachments, and hidden insecurities, which means your journey is not really about building perfect external security. It's about discovering internal stability that survives uncertainty, and that is a very different thing. Over time, if you become conscious of this placement, something beautiful begins to happen. You stop measuring your worth through possessions, approval, or external validation. Your relationship with money becomes healthier because it is no longer tied completely to identity. Your speech becomes calmer, wiser, and more intentional. You stop talking merely to fill silence, and people begin listening carefully when you do speak. Because your words carry experience behind them, you also begin understanding that security is not something the world can permanently hand to you. Real security comes from knowing that even if life changes, you will remain centered within yourself. And once that understanding matures, Ketu in the second house becomes incredibly refined. There is a quiet dignity that develops in you, a simplicity, an ability to detach from unnecessary noise. You start valuing depth over display, truth over performance, peace over endless accumulation. And interestingly, that inner detachment often improves material life rather than damaging it. Because fear stops controlling your decisions, you become less desperate, less reactive, more clear, and clarity creates stability better than fear ever could. Spiritually, this placement is slowly teaching you something profound. You are more than what you own, more than your family name, more than your image, more than the roles you perform for society. Ketu in the second house slowly dissolves false forms of security so that you can discover a deeper one, not external, internal, something quieter, something harder to lose, something that remains even when life changes around you.